Welcome to Retail's Most Wanted, the podcast that examines the latest issues related to organized retail crime and how retailers and policymakers are fighting back against today's organized crime syndicates. Coming up on today's show, we'll be joined by Scott Glenn. He's the Vice President of Asset Protection at the Home Depot. Gift card fraud may be one of those things that flies under the radar, but it's fueling organized crime, especially during the holidays. Scott's going to join us to unpack how the Home Depot is working with law enforcement and with lawmakers to protect consumers. That's coming up right after this from our sponsor. Retail's Most Wanted is brought to you in partnership with LVT, securing physical environments through intelligent automation. Learn more at lvt.com. That's lvt.com. Welcome back. Scott Glenn oversees Home Depot's efforts to prevent theft, fraud, and organized crime. As a former prosecutor and recognized leader in retail asset protection, Scott brings deep expertise in both strategy and enforcement. Scott, thanks so much for joining us. Let's start with a simple but revealing question. Why are gift cards so attractive to criminals, and why should that concern the average shopper?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. I would say first and foremost, kind of start with the risk reward aspect, right? It's not something that has a whole lot of attention to it, generally from law enforcement compared to some of the more overt types of crimes that are out there. It's a difficult crime to see. It's a difficult crime to investigate and prosecute. So it does kind of a little bit fly under the radar, when it comes to that. So I think the anonymity, the speed, the gift cards, the way they give you that kind of, flexibility to purchase your way, makes them very attractive, but it also makes it an attractive vehicle for the bad guys too, to think about. And then, I would say maybe the third, and maybe it's an important part of it is like consumers don't always treat gift cards like they should be treated, like a financial instrument, right? It's, I'm guilty. I have a drawer in my kitchen that probably has a couple $100 worth of gift cards sitting around. I would never leave a couple $100 of cash sitting in a drawer someplace. And I think that the average consumer thinks about it, or maybe lack of thinks about it that way, and they just don't treat it the way it should be. So it doesn't always kind of get the level of attention that it would certainly deserve. But I think the scammers think about it that way. They know how to manipulate it. They know how to stay ahead of us. They know how to stay under the radar. And I think that, because of all those factors, it does bring in a little bit more advantage for the bad guys when it comes to gift cards.
You may have a couple of gift cards with a couple $100 on it. I have a couple hundred gift cards with about $1 on each one, and that's why they're in the
all
drawer.
The balance trades, right?
That's how I keep it nice and secure. We often think about organized retail crime in terms of shoplifting, rings, or even smash and grabs. How does gift card fraud fit into that paradigm?
Yeah, again, I mean, back to some of the previous answer, it's certainly there's an anonymity piece of it to it. There's a couple things when I think about it, like, it's an unnoticed crime to a certain degree. Like, you sometimes don't even know that the crime happened until little Johnny goes to, cash his gift card at the store and realizes that the balance has been drained. So it kind of is, it's a subgroup of organized retail crime. It is a very organized group of individuals that do this. I mean, you have to be relatively sophisticated to be able to pull this type of crime off. So it's there. It just doesn't get the attention because it's not the ones that are on TV. It's not the ones that get a lot of attention from the media. It's not a lot of things that show up on social media. But I think it's a sad one because there's emotion involved in this. There's people that feel betrayed. There's people that feel like something's there. From a retailer's perspective, it kind of breaks some of the bonds of trust. It hurts the brand. It's not, somebody got scammed and there's no balance on the gift card. It's Home Depot sold me a defective gift card or a defective product, or they scammed me out of my money, and realizing we were as much of a victim in this case as the person who's receiving the card. So I think it fits well within the schema of what ORC is, but it just continues to fly under the radar a little bit.
So many of these cases involve coordination across state lines and across jurisdictions. How is the Home Depot working with law enforcement to track and disrupt these operations?
Yeah. Listen, I think first off, I think we've been leading from the front a little bit on this, from the ORC piece of it. Um, Many years ago, I've been here now for 7.5 years, but when I got here, certainly saw the impact of ORC. I would even say maybe I wasn't a full believer in how big of an impact ORC could potentially be from prior lives. But when I got here, I'm a believer. I became a believer. And so, we had a, review, and we were trying to understand how much of an impact is this and how do we go about it? What's our strategy going to be? And one of the things that we really started to do is try to educate some of our lawmakers. Particularly, we felt like, to your point, because so many of these crimes cross jurisdictional lines, going and trying to get a county prosecutor, a city prosecutor, that's probably not the right avenue to go after this. So we did go after, like, at least to start, state attorney generals, right? How can we educate them a little bit better on some of the things that are happening? Do they understand what ORC is? Do they understand the impact of it? Not just the financial impact of it, but the safety impact, the fact that these people really do anything. They'll put people in harm's way in order to, perpetuate their crimes and go through this. So I think we've been really good about kind of educating those folks, helping them understand the impact, helping them build up, what would it take to put a task force together, to put resources together, to get funding, to get legislation passed properly. And so, we've been doing a lot of that effort. And then just as we got some success in those places, we continued to expand it into the federal level and to other places as well. So, certainly, it's not an easy, and it's certainly not a quick fix. But I think we've been getting some momentum, and I think we're moving in the right direction.
It's good to hear that you're a believer. You've also been a strong advocate for policy reform. What kinds of legislative changes are you pushing for, and why do they matter at this time?
Yeah. So, certainly Inform was probably the biggest, industry approach to this type of scenario. And so we did a lot of work on Inform, and while Inform has been I would say a net positive, there's still some opportunities, and so we've been pushing on some follow-ups on that. There's some peer-to-peer retail or reselling opportunities that are on there. Many states have gone and kind of put their own version of Inform in place. Some of them have actually been challenged in court and actually been successfully challenged in court. So we're working on those. Even here in Georgia, our home state has been one of the places where a state level Inform bill has been, going after. But I would say continuing to spread the message. We have about 20, I think it's 28, 29 states, depending on the day, that have a, state level task force. Well, that leaves a lot of the country for us to continue to lobby and go after. Certainly at the federal level, CORCA, the Combating Organized Retail Crime Act, is our next big objective. I mean, there's no doubt that this has to get done. We have to have real hard federal level actions and legislation happening in place for all of us in the retail space to kind of go after this jointly. And so it's rinse and repeat to a certain degree. It's a lot of the same types of things that we're going after, but almost 40% of the country still has an opportunity at the state level. Certainly the federal bill with CORCA is next on our agenda. And frankly, I think we'll get it done. I mean, I don't know whether it's going to get done here in 2025, but probably at least early in 26, we would see, that federal level bill out there. So those are some of our main objectives from our lobbying efforts.
Some critics argue that retailers just want harsher penalties. How do you respond to that? And what's your broader goal with these policy efforts?
Yeah, I mean, that's like, we want penalties that actually matter. We want penalties that serve as a deterrent. We want penalties that put, business owners, customers, associates, in the forefront, because, frankly, for too long, these folks have been working and getting away with some of these high level crimes with impunity. And as I said a little bit earlier, they're doing it without regard to people's safety. I mean, like, some of these folks will, run you over. Some of these folks will swing a machete at you. Some of these people will shoot you. I mean, there is nothing that's really trying to get, get them out of the store that's more important to them is getting out of the store. So long story short, we're not looking to go after every criminal, low level shoplifter. We're not looking for the folks that are on the ground per se. We want to be able to use them to move up the hierarchy. We want to be able to move them to find the fences. We want to be able to move them to get to the kingpins that are running these organizations. And again, I think it's important that people really understand, and this is part of that education effort. This is not shoplifting for shoplifting. This is not the shoplifting for need. This is shoplifting for greed, right? So when you think about what ORC is, it is simply a monetization effort for other crimes. Again, money laundering, gun running, drug trafficking, human trafficking, all those things that everybody should care about. And there should be strong penalties around. And I think that, for a while we got away from that as, I'll even say, at the risk of sounding political, we got away from that as a country, where there was very little consequence for these types of things for a lot of different reasons. And I get that. But now we're at a point where it just can't be sustainable. And so that's why we're continuing to push for not penalties for penalty's sake, but penalties because penalties have to have some deterrent effect. They have to have some impression of control.
Yeah, it's not about the punishment so much, just getting to the right outcome and stopping the behavior. Yeah,
absolutely.
Let's talk prevention. What steps is the Home Depot taking to protect customers from falling victim to gift card scams?
Yeah, so it's a lot of grassroots stuff, and I would say education is really at the center of what we're doing. We spend a lot of calories working with our associates, with our field teams, helping them understand, what does a scam look like? When you think about, there's a lot of different ways that these scams work. There's the scams that happen as you take gift cards out of a store, go get the numbers, put them into a system, bring them back to a store, wait for the customer to purchase, right? Then there's the online side of the scams, where people are just using, fraudulent credit cards or stolen credit cards and buying gift cards. Then there's the in-person scams where somebody is being asked to come into the store and buy, those types of gift cards or financial instruments to go provide them to somebody else. And so for the average frontline associate, how do you look for those things? What should you see? What are the common behaviors? What should we tell you to do that we don't put you in harm's way if it does, if you do recognize these things? And so we spend a lot of time, we have a lot of training programs on those types of things. We have a lot of signage, we have a lot of education. We're also spending a lot of time, even if you look at our website, there's information about, for consumers. If you're buying this, if you see this, if you walk up to our gift card carousel in our stores, there's signage on there that says, hey, are you being asked to do this for some reason? There's a lot of ways we're trying to educate the public on these types of things. And so, it's unfortunate that, there's an element to this where they're preying on people's, emotion, and they're preying on, in some cases, people's fears. And so a lot of times it's just slow down, think this through. We would never ask you to pay a government official in gift cards. We would never ask you to pay a, regulator or pay your electric bill in gift cards. There's so many kind of takes on this that you do have to slow down and think about, is this logical? Is this something that I can test? Is there something that I can check? Is there somebody that I can call? And so a lot of that's the education that we're putting out there and trying to help people understand what the avenues of this are.
Is that education part of like the advice you would give to shoppers? Especially right now, you're going to see more and more shoppers between now and Christmas, or even through the new year. Is that the advice you would want them to have, or is there other advice you'd want to share with them at this time of the year in particular?
No, I think that's it. I think it's the old adage of, buyer beware, the old adage of, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. Where it gets difficult and where I see some of the challenges are some of the technology, components of this. And so, I think about like voice recognition, voice patterns, voice printing is probably the better way to say it. Deep fakes, the ability to kind of play on that emotions. And so how do you get people to understand that there's ways that people go about this that you need to slow down and think about, like, could this really be happening? Is this likely to be happening? And so, maybe related, unrelated, but like my family, we have a password. And if we ever get a call, if anybody ever gets a call that says, I'm in trouble. I'm this. I'm in jail. I'm, being kidnapped, whatever it is. It's like, there's just simply a question that we ask and say, give me the password. And if they don't know the password, then we know that it's not a real situation. And so I'm not saying that's the answer for everything. I'm just saying it's one step to think about and one thing that you can do. So my advice would be slow down and really think through the pattern of facts that are happening. And is that realistic under the circumstances that you're dealing with?
Yeah. I'll get you out of here on this question.
Sure.
Looking to the future, what gives you hope or confidence that we're making progress in the fight against organized retail crime?
Well, I mean, a couple of the things I talked about, right? So, first off, I think maybe 6 or 7 years ago, 1, 2, maybe 5 at the most, states might have had some laws around what they were calling organized retail crime at the time. I think that there were some companies that were, fixated on it, but I think more today than where we were just that short time ago. We've got 28, 29 states that have task forces, new legislation set up. We've got Inform passed. We've got CORCA on the verge of being passed. We've got retailers who day in, day out fight against each other for every last dollar of sales, coordinating and cooperating on organized retail crime investigations. The public is much more in tune to it. C-level executives talk about it. It's much more, not to be a fear monger, but it's meant to be a recognition that this is a challenge. It is a drag. It is something that is real and is out there that's, hurting retailers, putting people at risk. And frankly, I think the industry is making some good strides against. I don't think we've solved the problem yet. And as we all know, the criminals are always going to stay one step ahead of us, and we're going to continue to try to figure it out. But especially in the age of technology, I mean, just with all the new advances that are happening out there, I think it's something that we can't ever, ring the bell and say we've won, but it's something that I can think we could say very realistically we've made progress on.
When competitors come together, the problem has gotten to a significant point, and it's also
That's right.
the worst news for the bad guys, because usually when competitors get together and work on an issue like that, something good comes out of it.
There's nowhere to hide.
Yeah. Scott Glenn, Vice President of Asset Protection at the Home Depot. Scott, thank you so much for your work fighting back against ORC, and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Have a great day.
All right, that's it for this episode of Retail's Most Wanted. Thanks to our presenting sponsor, LVT. And don't forget to hit that follow or subscribe button so you can catch each new episode. We drop a new one every 2 weeks. You can also find us on X, on LinkedIn, and YouTube. Thanks for being with us, everyone. And as always, keep up the good fight.